Hello, BookTube. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Juan. I am just one reader, your favorite Mexican booktuber who reads in English. But for some reason, I am doing this ridiculously fake British accent right now. I'll probably switch to a different accent sometime during the course of the video. Anyway, I am deliriously mad with excitement because in this video I will finally be talking about one of my all-time favorite books, or rather a book that I've always considered and claimed to be one of my favorite books. But is it really? This video will tell me if it actually is, because today I am finally re-evaluating, reassessing my thoughts, my enjoyment and my appreciation on The Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss. So the reason why I wanted to make this video is because I originally read The Name of the Wind when it was published like 1,000 years ago. I was still in high school, so that was some time ago. And I just remember from that particular experience, I absolutely adored this book and everything that it represented for my personal moment as a reader in that particular time, you know, still a teenager, still in my teens. And I just thought Patrick Rothfuss's writing was absolutely out of this world. Now, I read that book for the first time back then. Then I think I reread it a couple years after that because the second book, The Wise Man's Fear, came out. And when it was published, of course, I went back and revisited The Name of the Wind. And I think the second time around reading it, I loved it just as much, if not even better than the first time. And then I read The Wise Man's Fear. And I do think that I liked The Wise Man's Fear more than The Name of the Wind, although that's hard to say now, but I really loved The Wise Man's Fear when I read it originally. I will be talking about The Wise Man's Fear in another video, on a separate video, because I need to reread this book. So I will not really focus on this one. I will focus solely on The Name of the Wind, and I will do so without really spoiling anything. Then, of course, there was another book that came out in the series or within the same world, which is The Slow Regard of Silent Things, which is a novella. It's a strange, weird, quirky little thing, that novella is. And I don't really remember liking it all that much, but again, I have to reread that book before I can really tell you more about that. But anyway, so it's been what, like 14 years or something since I originally read The Name of the Wind. It's been such an incredibly long time since I did read it for the first time, and now another novella within the same universe or world of Patrick Rothfuss's books has been published, The Narrow Road Between Desires. And I already have my copy, as you very well can see, but I haven't read it because first I decided I'm going to read the series again. I'm just going to reread the series because it's been so freaking long. And so I did. I haven't read this. I am saving it for later, for late December. So I just reread The Name of the Wind. I will be rereading The Wise Man's Fear. But in this video, I want to talk about some of the things that I have noticed or reassessed now about The Name of the Wind. So it's really odd, isn't it, when you revisit a book that you've always considered to be one of your all-time favorites, because what happens is when you read a book that you enjoy this much and that you treasure this much, it becomes almost sort of like a part of your identity as a reader, of a certain part of your reading history, if that makes any sense to you. And that to me happened with The Name of the Wind. And the thing is, because I hadn't read it in so long, it sort of became a core memory within me, and as such, there was, of course, a process of idealization and nostalgia that took place. And so I just kind of always remembered The Name of the Wind to be absolutely wonderful in every single aspect. And now that I have reread it, there are certainly some parts that still hold up, and there are actually some parts that I was quite disappointed by, but then again, there are some parts that I was quite surprised by. So firstly, let's talk about the writing, because I really think this book is all about the writing style and the narration aspect of it. And when I read it originally, I was, like I said, a teenager, and I just thought this was like the most beautifully written book under the sun. I no longer think that. I do think there are some beautifully written passages throughout the book. However, I actually did find some of the writing here to be quite juvenile in terms of its hyperbolic nature. There was a lot of melodramatic turn of phrase and poetic language that sometimes worked, sometimes it didn't work, and when it didn't work, which was many times, it just felt like, I don't know how to say it, but it just felt kind of on the nose, and just like there's so many metaphors and similes. Like Patrick Rothfuss uses this kind of really over the top descriptions, particularly with similes, that I think was just kind of cringy, and it was just too hyperbolic and melodramatic for my personal taste. Although I have to say, it kind of makes sense, because it feels intentional as well, because this book deals a lot with heroic deeds and juvenile heroic deeds as well, and so there's a part of that is probably justified why it sounds so grandiose, but still I found the prose to be sometimes quite over the top and not as elegant as I remembered it being, although I also think this is due to my personal change as a reader over the years. I think I've become a reader who is much more impressed with simplistic, beautiful, precise, sparse language. Like, think of something like George Saunders, who uses the bare minimum building blocks of language just to convey the most beautiful sentences. That's kind of more what I think is great writing nowadays, whereas this was just too stylistic. Again, sometimes it worked, and when it did work, I thought it was dazzlingly good, but sometimes it was just like cringy. Then let's talk about character. This book is about a character's life. It is a Bildungsroman man in that way. We follow the character of Quoth. That's how I pronounce it, Quoth. And I really like the character of Quoth. I do think that this time around, rereading the book as a grumpy, jaded, bitter old man, I found the character a little too juvenile for my taste, a little too cartoonish for my taste. I don't have a problem with that necessarily, but I didn't find him as interesting or three-dimensional this time around. Again, this could be because the book deals with the creation of a hero or the mythical story behind a heroical figure, and that would sort of explain why I felt that way. It also could be because I am just a different kind of reader now than when I originally read the book. Still not a problem with that. I actually found Quoth a little bit like a Hermione Granger kind of character, a male Hermione Granger in a way, especially when it comes to university and, you know, the different courses and the masters and, you know, the lessons and everything that he has to do, and how he's very driven and focused. I really liked that aspect of his character. I did, however, find that I had a big problem now with the supporting characters. Yeah, I think Quoth and a handful of other characters in the book are well fleshed out. The rest of them, the supporting cast, I did not really think they were compelling or lifelike enough. This is particularly true for Quoth's friends at university. I could not tell you who's who. I could not really separate them, distinguish them from one another. They just sort of blurred in my mind, and they just didn't feel like they had enough presence or enough of a voice, you know, which is something that, for example, J.K. Rowling does incredibly well in the Harry Potter series. She imbues each character with enough life and enough personality that they become really distinct from one another, and you can just tell who's talking by the dialogue itself, not by reading who's talking. And I think that that aspect of the character writing was lacking in this book. The same thing happened with some of the masters at university. Some of them are more recognizable and important than others, but the rest of them are just kind of, there. And I was not impressed by the masters. This is, of course, not true for the one and only, like, really interesting, important master of the university, which is Elodin. Elodin is a character that I still to this day, rereading the book now, I've always found him incredibly interesting. I just really, really love that character, especially because now, this is really funny, but since I read the book for the first time, now I have trained to become a psychoanalyst. I am a psychoanalyst now, and the character of Elodin sort of speaks to my sensibility as a psychoanalyst, because that's really the kind of psychoanalysis that I practice in my private practice, in my clinical practice, which is contemporary psychoanalysis, which is a little different to classic Freudian psychoanalysis, which is more about finding the hidden, repressed truth within the patient and sort of confronting the patient with that truth in a way. Modern contemporary psychoanalysis that is more akin to what I personally do is more about being there with the patient, working through things with the patient. There's an emphasis on processing emotional truth and dealing with anxieties like confusion, and in order to find not necessarily truth itself, but just the process of getting there is healing in and of itself. And I think Elodin and his scenes with the character of Quoth are really representative of that. If you have read the book, you probably sort of get what I am talking about. So I really liked Elodin. I really liked those kind of philosophical musings and reflections, and those chapters where characters are speaking out loud and pondering these ideas. And I guess my overall conclusion, now that I have reread this book finally after so many years, is I don't feel the same way. I still think it's a great book. I don't think it is a 5-star book anymore. I think it's more like a 4 stars book for me, which is still a great book. It is a really interesting fantasy. In terms of the fantasy genre aspect of the book, I have to say I really like this kind of fantasy. Is my kind of fantasy. This is the fantasy that I enjoy reading very much. It feels ancient. It feels sort of natural, very much about the natural world. It is sort of long lost, forgotten, archaic kind of magic. It feels primal and sort of ancient. I don't know, there's something primitive about this magic, and I like fantasy books like this one that don't spell anything like out there, like really clearly and explicitly, which is something that modern fantasy does a lot, and I don't always like it. Here, instead of a hard magic system, we get a really soft magic system. There are some things that are more scientific, like sympathy and some other like things that have rules and stuff like that. But the real magic at the core of this book, with the names and everything, feels very much very mysterious. There's an element of mystery that I love about this kind of magic. Now, I have to say, the best thing about this book, by far, in my humble opinion, is the Chandrian. Anything that has to do with the Chandrian is wonderful. It's golden. I think that's where Patrick Rothfuss just did it the best. I think that every single time that we read about the Chandrian, every single time that Quoth is reading about the Chandrian or thinking about that or doing something that gets him closer to finding out about the Chandrian, that's where the book shines the most. I think that is absolutely splendid. So yeah, the whole thing with the Chandrian I think was absolutely just wonderful. I really loved those bits, and again, it sort of struck a chord with my psychoanalytical sensibility, because as a psychoanalyst, I am always sort of on a quest with all of my patients. I find it's a quest for something unknown. There's a part of something known that we are looking for together in the consulting room, but there's also a part of something that we don't even know what it is that we're looking for, but we are looking for something, and it's unknown. And the process of being there together with the patient looking for X, Y, or Z is healing in and of itself, and there's just a lot of confusion along the way, but also sort of like those Elodin and Quoth chapters, they are a lot of fun, and that's why I love being a psychoanalyst. That's why I love working with patients, because it makes me feel like lost in the darkness in a way, but it's a beautiful, fun, interesting process. And anyway, yeah, I think The Name of the Wind is one of those fantasy books that speak really well to a psychoanalyst today. So that's what I can say about The Name of the Wind right now. It's a 4-star book, not quite 5 stars. I think I have read some better fantasy books that deserve 5 stars. So I am pretty happy giving it 4 stars. I will be rereading The Wise Man's Fear next and posting another video. And before I go, I want to share some recommendations for you, just in case you have enjoyed The Name of the Wind or anything by Patrick Rothfuss. I want to give you some recommendations of some other books in the fantasy genre and in some other genres that I think you would probably enjoy. So first of all, we have to go with Robin Hobb. Robin Hobb is the queen of fantasy. In a way, reading Patrick Rothfuss sort of reminds me of Robin Hobb, except Robin Hobb is better in every single regard. I'm sorry, she's just the best. You cannot compete with the Queen. So if you want to read Robin Hobb and you haven't before, you should probably start with the first one, which is The Assassin's Apprentice, and that is book 1 in the Farseer trilogy, which is the first trilogy within the realm of the Elderlings, which is a wonderful series that I think everyone should read. And then also, talking about Robin Hobb, another series that you can read as a standalone is the Soldier Son trilogy, which starts with Shaman's Crossing. Now, this is one of the best fantasy series that I have ever read in my life, and it saddens me that it's not as popular as it should be. This is wonderful. It is very much like The Name of the Wind in terms of the tone, in terms of the natural aspect to the magic, in terms of the tone and the feel, but I think this is better than The Name of the Wind, honestly. I think this trilogy is amazing. It's so frightening as well. It's so unique, and I'm pretty sure you haven't read it, so do it. Then, switching to a different genre, The Essex Serpent by Sarah Perry, which is more like a gothic thriller or a gothic suspense story. I don't know how to catalog this book, but it is sort of reminiscent of The Name of the Wind in terms of the beautiful writing, in terms of being character driven, and the emphasis on the natural world as well. I think this is a lovely, again, frightening gothic kind of book. And finally, I have to mention Piranesi by Susanna Clarke. This is fantasy, but it is, again, kind of like a soft fantasy. And what I think connects this book to The Name of the Wind is the mystery. This book has a lot of mystery, a lot of, just that kind of feeling of wondrous fascination for the unknown, which, is, I think, what all of these books share in common. So if you have any recommendations for me, for fellow readers who have enjoyed The Name of the Wind, let me know in the comments down below. Let me know, do you like The Name of the Wind? Have you tried it? Have you not tried it? Do you agree with me? Do you completely disagree with me? I would love to know. Thanks for watching. I am Just One Reader, and I will see you on the next video.